It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Hello, how are you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are all doing pretty good. I'm doing all right over here. Work's picking up, you know, getting a little bit busier every day. It's still not back to like full normal stuff, but you know, everybody's been working every day, so that's a plus. And starting to get to the point where I have, you know, a bunch of things that I need to work on. Like today I was working in the office doing quotes and I didn't get to get everything out that I wanted to, so that is a good sign that we're picking up to the point that I can't keep up with the office work. So let's just hope it keeps getting better and better. Hopefully it's getting better for you guys where you're at. I want to start this off and let everybody know, you know, the different ways that you guys can communicate with me. You know, a lot of people will send me emails to my email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. There's a couple different YouTube channels that I'm associated with, the HVAC Overtime channel, the HVACR Tools YouTube channel. There's every one of my videos, all the information is in the show notes, okay? So there's links to HVAC Overtime, HVACR Tools, this channel, Discord server. We have a Discord server, and I will admit that I am not very active lately in the Discord server. It's just one of the things that I haven't been able to keep up with, okay? But we do have a Discord server. My buddy Ike runs it for me, and you know, sometimes I'll hang out. I shouldn't even say sometimes. I used to hang out before the stream, but I just haven't been able to do that lately. I'm going to post a link to the Discord server right now in the YouTube chat, okay? Feel free to join the server. They got stuff going on. I think Ike's doing a movie night or something like that where they're talking about a movie. You guys can definitely check that out. But those are all different ways that you can get a hold of me. Obviously on Facebook, all my social media platforms is at HVACR videos. So there's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I think I had a TikTok, but I don't post on there. I don't know. I was talking to my wife the other day about TikTok. I'm very stubborn and very old school, so it's hard for me to adopt new stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, if MySpace was still a thing, I'd probably still be on MySpace. I'm very stubborn when it comes to that kind of stuff, so I'd love to start posting little clips and it sounds fun, you know, on TikTok, but I don't have the time. You know, I was talking to my wife about it the other day, and I was like, maybe I could start like recording clips and let her post them for me and stuff like that. Maybe, you know, my wife, this whole videos thing was never really planned. I never expected this to turn into what it's turned into. The whole live streams. I've been doing these live streams for over 2 years straight, same time every single day, or every single time, Monday evenings, 5 p.m. Pacific, and the live streams initially were a way to consolidate all the questions because there's so many questions, you know, in comments, and I couldn't keep track of it. So the live stream was originally just there to answer the questions, but the live stream has turned into its own thing too, where, you know, we have all these people that come on a regular, you guys that are watching right now, and you know, it's hard to even keep up with that. So I try, all right, but if I miss your guys' questions, if I miss your communications, feel free to send me an email, and keep sending me an email until I, you know, respond or say stop sending it. Okay, it's okay. Trust me, if you guys saw my inbox, you would understand. Okay, by the time, you know, I save emails to get to the live stream, and to be honest with you, those emails are lost in a chain of emails, you know, and I have to go through and try to scavenge. And, you know, I try to get to the YouTube comments too, and it's like there's so many. So these are first world problems. They really are. And I'm thankful for my petty problems. Okay. I'm very thankful and humbled by all of your guys' support with this YouTube channel. Again, never anticipated doing anything. I really haven't even acknowledged it, but we just passed 100,000 subscribers. I don't have it up on my wall, but I used to have a stainless steel sign that my buddy Rich and Ike together, Rich made it, and I gave him the idea and everything. But, you know, I had an HVAC or a sign behind me that said 100,000 subscribers. I took that down, but I have my silver play button back there. But it's still so humbling because I never planned on any of this. I never planned on anybody watching my videos. You know, they originally started for my own employees, and then it morphed into this thing. It's a trip. So as usual, if you guys have questions in the live stream, feel free to put them in caps lock. That way it helps me to see them. Again, if I don't answer them, just keep posting them until myself or the moderators tell you to stop, okay? So, bottom line, thank you guys all so much for all the support you guys have given and continue to give. You guys are awesome, okay? I will say, too, and I posted it on my social media platforms today, that I do have a full stock of the hats. I was out of hats for a while, the large, extra large hats. They are in stock on my website, hvacrvideos.com. You can check them out. We have large, small shirts, all that different stuff. So please check out the website. But they are available on there. Okay. The question right here says, what is the brand that I feel is the best for HVAC tools / equipment? You know, I'm not going to say one brand is better than the other. Every brand out there has something that's really good and has things that aren't the greatest. Okay. I'm a huge supporter of Field Piece tools, but Field Piece makes some stuff that either doesn't apply to the line of work or that I don't like. So Field Piece has great tools, but they have some stuff that just doesn't work for me, okay? And that's normal. You know, you don't have to be married to one single brand. When it comes to equipment too, you know, I really like, you know, one particular brand of refrigeration equipment, Russell. You know, I like their condensing units, but their evaporators, they're okay, you know? So it really depends. I'm not married to any one brand, and you have to remember that if you become so brand loyal, you could miss out on good stuff. So you really have to just kind of keep your eyes open and be open to other brands and other tools. And the same thing, like, you know, with this new tools channel that we're doing, HVACR Tools, you know, we're going to continue to do videos on there, but and I'm sure you guys have noticed, but it is not going to be structured like my YouTube, this channel is structured. This channel is consistent, 2 videos a week, boom, 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 right? But the tools channel is not. The tools channel is just something fun that myself and the overtime guys are doing. We'll post videos when we post videos, but the whole point, the whole idea of me making a YouTube channel called HVACR Tools was, it literally came from the idea of wanting to post or seeing these posts on Facebook where people are like, hey, what pants do you guys wear? What, you know, boots do you wear? Whatever. And it was like, hey, you know, I'm in a position, right? I'm super blessed and humbled to be in this position, but I'm in a position where I can buy a couple different pairs of pants just to try them out. And that's what I did. I can buy, a testo manifold just to try it out. Now, I'm not bragging or gloating or anything, but I'm putting it out there so that way you guys can benefit from that stuff too. Okay. But again, I'm open. I have an open mind. And, I wore one particular pair of pants for a very long time. And I just wanted to know what else was out there. So I put some polls out there and then went and bought a bunch of different pairs of pants. Same thing with the testo manifold. I was curious. I'd never owned anything testo before. Everybody seemed to like it. So I bought it and I tried it out. It's a nice manifold, but it's not my favorite. It has good and bad things. So does every tool. And it really depends on each particular person and what they like. Some people love a certain brand, condensing unit, whatever. And so be it, to each their own. When people like non-HVAC people, they'll email me on a regular, right? I get emails all the time, is my contractor ripping me off, that kind of stuff. And I don't mind answering them when I can. I can't get to them, every single second, but people will say, hey, what's the best brand air conditioner to buy? And it's like, I don't really have an opinion on what's the best brand. There's several good brands. Every brand is going to have problems. So what I usually tell people, and I actually just told this to my aunt and my uncle because they called me, they live a little ways away from me, and they're buying a new system for their house. And they're like, hey, what brand should we buy? And I'm like, I'd say I wouldn't be so concerned about what brand that you buy. And I would be more concerned with finding a reputable company that you trust and then trust the fact that they service and warranty this particular brand. Because, when it comes to ice machines, people will ask me all the time, what's my favorite ice machine? And okay, I can say what my favorite is, but I also understand that there's plenty other ice machines that are just as good. It's just what I'm comfortable working on. I'm super comfortable working on Manitowoc ice machines and Hoshizaki ice machines. I'm not as comfortable working on Isomatic or Scotsman, but it's not that Isomatic and Scotsman suck. It's just that I'm more comfortable with these other brands. So, when it comes to people asking me what's the best brand air conditioner, well, it really depends on the servicing company and what they're comfortable working on. Now, the question, the question of the day is how do you find a reputable service company? I can't really answer that one for you. You got to look for a lot of different indicators. But, hopefully that answers your question. I feel like I went off on a tangent there a little bit. But, all right, let me see what else we got in here. Hello to everybody. I see all the highs and everything. It's really cool to see that. You really have to ask why people keep asking about pants. Nobody asked about pants. I actually brought it up. But, yeah, that was the whole thing about the pants. So. You wear a Carhartt thong. That's pretty funny. So, hey, in a selfish way, making that video about pants is really a justification for me to be able to buy several different pairs of pants and write them off as a videos expense and then, be able to figure out which one I like. I mean, so to be honest, that's the truth right there too. And I've been thinking about doing a work boot video because I'm curious about work boots. Had I not had this platform, it would have been harder to use that as a business expense because technically you're not supposed to write off work boots or pants or anything like that as a business expense. But if you're making a video about it, it's a little bit different. So I'm thankful for, the ability to be able to do that kind of stuff. And in fact, it's you guys that watch these videos and support this channel that make me capable of being able to do that. So thank you so very much. I really do appreciate you guys. Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk about something. First off, there was a cool conversation going on between Ike and Rich in the chat in the beginning, and it wasn't so much HVAC relevant, but I'm going to make it HVAC relevant. Okay. And they were talking about vehicles. Ike was having some vehicle problems and Rich was kind of talking about it. And, I commented a little bit, but when it comes to our service vehicles, okay, a service vehicle is a benefit, right? I know some people see them as a need and, they won't work for a company if they get a service vehicle. Okay. So, we're not going to go down that path, but a service vehicle is a benefit. And, yes, the service company is responsible for maintaining those vehicles and making sure that they're working properly. But we as service technicians do have an obligation, being the people driving those service vehicles, to make sure that the vehicles are operating properly. We drive them every single day. We know what's a normal sound. We know what's strange. We know what a weird vibration is. We know that when we're going down a hill and you lightly apply the brakes and the van starts to get a shimmy, we feel that stuff. Our service managers, our dispatchers, our, whoever's in charge at your company, they don't know that stuff's going on unless we as service technicians relay that information to them. So it is our responsibility as a service technician to give our companies the information they need. There's nothing worse, and it's an inconvenience for us as service technicians too when our vehicles have downtime. Okay, I'm a business owner. I have to deal with this stuff all the time. Downtime is the worst thing in the world. For me, as a small business owner, I don't have extra vehicles, especially in these COVID times, right? So if I have a service technician that his van breaks down, he's out of work until his van gets back up and running, okay? Because we're not lumping together service technicians in these crazy times right now. There's not two people riding in vehicles because of all the COVID crap, okay? So it's so important that we keep on top of our vehicle maintenance, just like as we go out to these customers and we repair their equipment and we say, in an ass backwards way, we say, I told you so, right? When we hand them a bill for a lot of money for something that could have been prevented, we have to remember that we have to maintain our own vehicles too. Now, I'm not saying as a service technician that you need to change your own oil or anything like that. I don't know the situations at your company. That's not how it works here. We in the office have that stuff done. We'll tell the service tech to go take it to the dealership or something like that. But I'm just saying, if we can prevent the downtime on our vehicles, we can keep working. At least that's the way that we operate at my company. I don't have extra vans sitting around to throw someone in. And it's not going to work going and renting a vehicle to throw someone in a rental vehicle because they don't have all their tools and their parts and their fittings. And that's just a very big inconvenience. So I would encourage all of you guys to remember to check on things, right? To follow up on things. And I am just as guilty. I'll be honest with you. I have a newer vehicle that has never been to the dealership or never had any major service done. And I think I've got 24,000 miles on it. I mean, I've had oil changes and stuff, right? But that's pretty much it. I've rotated the tires, but I'm just as guilty as forgetting to rotate my tires, of forgetting to get my oil changed and that kind of stuff. I will oftentimes prioritize my own service technicians because, again, as an owner, I'm thinking about them and I'm like, hey, you know what? This person's van hasn't been in the shop in a while and this person's van's been making a funny noise. I need to get that in the shop, and I'll tend to forget to put mine in the shop. So I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm saying as service technicians, we need to make sure we get that information to our offices, okay? Now, to kind of go away from the HVAC talk, I was mentioning in the chat, and this is something that we have to remember too, the younger generation and even my generation, right? I grew up with a piece of crap. My first car was a piece of crap car, and I had to check the oil. I had to I got flats all the time on the tires. It would always break down. But nowadays, it's so convenient for me. And again, this is a first world problem, but I have AAA, right? Or that's the Auto Club. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is, but we have an Auto Club here, AAA of Southern California. And basically, it's roadside service. I pay like $100 a year. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to gloat or anything like that. I'm just saying, for me, that amount is convenient for me to be able to call for a tow truck at any given time. But what that has done to me is that has made me forget the importance of checking the oil in my cars, because we assume that these newer cars that are much more reliable don't need to have the oil checked and don't need to have this or that done. And it does. Okay. So I think that as the generations change, we're definitely going down the path of getting away from, personally checking on our vehicles, checking the oil, doing this kind of stuff. And whether that be good or bad, I don't know, but I'm just saying, we need to try to step back and remember to do that stuff. And I have to remember, as a dad, I have a daughter that's about to drive in like a year. I have to start teaching her that stuff. And it's things that again, I'm thankful for my problems, but these are little things. So remember, make sure you maintain your vehicles. Let the office know when things have to happen. Find out what the intervals are on oil changes and tire rotations, and make sure you let the office staff know when your stuff needs to get done. And also, as an owner, sometimes people tell me things and it goes in one ear and out the other because I got other things on my mind. So keep reminding me. Keep reminding your office staff. Be that employee. I swear to you, if I had an employee that was annoying me because he was constantly telling me he needed oil changes, even though it annoys me, I'm thankful for that, right? Because I've got many other employees that I've never heard a single thing about their vehicles from, and I've had employees in the past that The only time they got their brakes looked at was whenever they'd pull into the shop and I can hear metal to metal grinding, and I'd have to say, what the heck, dude? Oh, I didn't notice, you know? So you got to keep on top of that stuff, all right? All right, let's see what else we got in here now that I went off on a rant. What do we got? Yeah, buy a diesel. They said it will be fun. They said, yeah. There's lots of things that people don't think about, you know. Diesels get great gas mileage, most of them, you know, but, you know, the maintenance costs are definitely up there. So, all right, let me see what else we got in here. All right. Let me go through my list of things to talk about. So, I wanted to kind of start out by talking about fan cycling because there's a huge, you know, I released a video yesterday with fan cycle controls and just the comments are blowing up. Okay. First and foremost, the service call was because of a dirty condenser, right? And I cleaned the condenser, but after I cleaned the condenser, I noticed that the fan cycle control was not acting properly. It was erratically turning the condenser fan motors on and off. Now, I know a lot of people are asking me, why did I go in with new fan cycle controls? Why not just put a head pressure control valve or a headmaster? Why not put one fan cycle control? And the bottom line is just because I didn't, okay? Fan cycle controls are not my favorite thing to use, but I thought it was the perfect example to show how I personally like to set up fan cycle controls if and when I have to use them. Unfortunately, with equipment costs, or with customers buying cheaper and cheaper equipment these days, right, and not wanting to spend a lot of money on it, there goes the Coke nose, guys, fan cycle controls are going to become more and more popular, right, because I don't know, they're cheaper. They put these little peanut controls on there. The failure rate's through the roof. Now, is the failure rate on a peanut style, that's the little encapsulated fan cycle control, is the failure rate because of a cheap control, or is it because the customers are not maintaining their equipment, the condensers are cycling on and off more, that kind of stuff, okay? I'm talking in general pressure controls now, right? If it's going on and off on low pressure, high pressure all the time, if the fan cycle switch, if the condenser's constantly dirty, if it's having a hard time moving air through the fan, you know, different things, is that what's causing the fan cycle switches to wear out, or is it just a cheap component? You know, that's kind of an interesting question. With customers these days getting away from proper preventative maintenance, we're going to start to see more and more of these failures. So I think it's partially a mixture of both. I think some of the fan cycle controls or the little peanut pressure controls are just really cheaply made. But then I also think that when they're running in harsh conditions, you know, with low voltage causing high amperage or high current through the switch, you know, arcing inside the switch and different things like that, I think that has a lot to do with the failure rate. I'm not going to necessarily blame it just on cheap components, okay? So in my situation, I decided to use 2 fan cycle switches. Now, it's not very common that you see that, but I will say that used to be a very common thing on Tecumseh condensing units. If you bought a Tecumseh condensing unit that had a 2-fan setup, they actually came from the factory with a dual fan cycle switch and a high pressure control, all on a little header in the control box. And it was very common for them to cycle one fan at one pressure, the second fan at another pressure, and then the third fan, or, you know, whatever, however many fans it was. So it's not very common anymore, okay? But why do we need fan cycling? Well, fan cycling is there to maintain a consistent condensing temperature, right? So that way we can maintain a consistent liquid pressure and temperature going to the expansion valve. If that pressure differential across the expansion valve gets too low or too high, you could have repercussions, mainly too low. You can have repercussions of the valve not being able to control the superheat, flooding out the evaporator, different things like that, okay? So just like on a head pressure control valve, the head pressure control valve is simply there to maintain a proper pressure differential across the expansion valve. The fan cycle controls are there for the same reason. The fan cycle controls, in my opinion, I always call them a low budget head pressure control valve because that's what they are. Now, I don't like using fan cycle controls very much, but if I do, I like to do what I did in my recent video where you have 2 fan cycle controls because one is going to cycle more than the other. And yes, that is going to lead to wear and tear on the fan motor and you know, one side being dirtier than the other. But that's the downside of fan cycling. If you put on head pressure control valves, in my opinion, they tend to make the system operate better, smoother. if you notice, if any of you guys ever work in refrigeration and you run a fan cycle control system, just like I had in my video, you have two condensers or two condenser fan motors, and it's controlled off of one control. What you're going to notice is a consistent on, off in mild temperatures like we have here in California all the time. So that's why I went with the two fan cycle switch setup, okay, to try to reduce the amount of on-off for both condenser fan motors, because when both are turning on and off, the sight glass will start flashing. You'll start feeding vapor down to the expansion valve, and it just kind of throws the entire system all out of whack. So that's just the way that I like to do it, okay? Yes, I could have thrown a head pressure control valve on that system. Yes, I probably could have even eliminated the fan cycle switches altogether, but I'd like to leave them in there just in case we have some cold days, and that way this equipment doesn't have an issue, all right? What you guys are going to start to notice too, and I haven't really talked about this very much, but we have new federal energy efficiency requirements that are going to be sweeping across the nation. They're called AWEF, Annual Walk-in Efficiency Factor. I don't know what the acronym means, but it's AWEF. And basically, they're starting something very similar to the SEER program that we have with air conditioning systems, but it's going to be kind of a energy efficiency rating factor for refrigeration equipment, and it's starting with walk-ins. It's called AWEF. And so basically right now we're in the infancy of it. It's brand new and it's being phased out across the country slowly, but they're starting out with some basic energy efficiency guidelines, okay? Your equipment has to do these certain things to try to maintain energy efficiency. It's got to have, you know, properly matched evaporator to condensing unit. It's got to have low electricity usage, right? So but think about it. How can you reduce the electricity consumption on a refrigeration equipment, right? Because it's got to run all the time. So what they start doing is making the equipment more efficient, okay? And what they're doing is they're floating the head pressure or bringing the head pressure lower on the system. So instead of maintaining a 90-degree condensing temp, right, they're going to start maintaining a 70-degree condensing temp. They're bringing that way down. So what you're going to start to notice is if equipment has head pressure control valves, the cut-in pressure on newer head pressure control valves is going to be like 120, 130, 150 psi instead of the 180 that it used to be. So they're bringing that condensing temp way down, sometimes 100 psi, depending on what you're working on. So they're trying to do that to reduce the energy consumption. They're also working on some other things too. Evaporator fan motors have to be energy efficient. They have to be ECM motors. There has to be evaporator fan staging. And I shouldn't say that they have to be ECM. I don't think that the requirement says that they have to be ECM, but it just simply says it has to meet these energy requirements. And at this point in time, my understanding of this, and I'm not an expert, but my understanding is the manufacturer is free to figure out how to meet that level of energy efficiency by doing whatever they want within their system. So some of them are putting microchannel condensers. Some of them are, you know, doing ECM motors, different things like that. So be prepared because this is sweeping across the country. With that being said, if we bring our condensing temperatures down on our equipment, the expansion valve sizing really comes into play because our expansion valves need to have a set pressure differential across them as we stand. And typically when we sized our valves at 90-degree condensing temp, if we bring our condensing temp down to 70 degrees, our valves could now potentially be oversized and they might not be able to control the evaporator superheat correctly anymore. So when it comes to the new AWEF requirements, we actually have a special way of sizing the expansion valves. And I am going to be doing a video kind of addressing some of this stuff. I wish I had the documentation in front of me because Sporlan has some really cool cheat sheets when it comes to sizing expansion valves for the new AWEF requirements and stuff. But I don't have those in front of me. So, but I do plan on making a video. I'm currently working on something. It's a slow project I've been building up where I'm going to talk about equipment sizing and how the AWEF requirements affect certain components and how to select the expansion valves. And so that'll be coming soon. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, let's see what else we got going on in here now that I've been talking forever. What happens when a scroll compressor runs backwards and what can it do to cause compressor damage? When a scroll compressor runs backwards, it doesn't properly move the refrigerant It doesn't properly displace the heat. It doesn't really do anything. And so it can cause the motor inside the compressor to actually overheat and cause damage to the system, okay? So scroll compressors are directional. They're only meant to run in one direction. So you got to be very careful about that stuff. All right, so I'm going to... do I think they will switch to inverter-style compressors with variable speed? I think that that is definitely one of the ways that manufacturers are going to be able to keep up with the energy requirements, the energy efficiency requirements. So yes, I do think that digital scroll compressors will soon become more and more popular and start to be out there a lot more. But with the, influx of all this new energy efficiency stuff, ECM fan motors, inverter-driven compressors, microprocessor-controlled equipment, we really, really need to focus hard on properly conditioning the power into our buildings. And I've said this so many times. I live in the state that has a ridiculously stupid power grid, Southern California, where we can't keep up with the load demand that we have from all the people that we have living here. And we just have power problems consistently. Whenever there's fires, they're cutting off power. Whenever it gets really hot, we have issues. So, California in general is a place that was, if you think about it, it's not really meant to be lived in like Southern California because it's the desert. We live in the desert and we do everything we can to adapt to the desert climate, heat, wind, all this different stuff. And, these are some of the ramifications. Our power grid is being taxed because we have so many people. We're piping water and all this different stuff. But that's a whole nother live stream. That's not an HVAC thing. So, all right. Have I encountered R54, 454B or any other HFO blends yet? Any experience with them? I have not encountered R454B. I believe that's the new one that Carrier is going to be adopting, right? As like the replacement for 410A. But no, I have not worked with that yet. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Let me see what we have. All right, I'm going to get to my list of things to talk about. So, why remove? And so in my recent video where I installed the 2 fan cycle switches, I removed the liquid line service valve that was downstream from the king valve coming off the receiver. And I said it was a redundant valve and it wasn't needed. And oh my gosh, I got blown up in the comments because so many people were stating the obvious. Okay, so let's explain this. First off, by removing that valve, I now made it impossible to change the dryer without pumping down the refrigeration system, okay? I do realize that. I realize that people have told me that in the comments, and I appreciate all the comments, okay? But I don't have a need to change my liquid line filter dryer without pumping the system down. The main reason why I took that service valve out of the system was because I could not access my suction service valve with a Schrader core removal tool, okay? Yes, I could have unbolted the liquid line service valve and kind of bent it out of the way. I have done that in the past. But again, personally, I don't do a lot of dryer changes on my systems unless I'm working on the system, okay? So by having the redundant valve in front of the receiver's king valve, I theoretically could have closed both of those valves, recover the charge out of just the dryer section, and change just the dryer, but I don't do that very often. So yes, that is a good point that people made, but it's just not something that I have a need to do. Now, if you have, the only time that I could really think that that would be something you might do is if you had a giant multiplex system or a supermarket style system where you've got multiple pieces of equipment running off of that, one liquid line filter dryer, then sure, I might not want to evacuate the whole system and do whatever, but this is a single evaporator walk-in cooler with a 35-40 foot line set. It's not a big deal to go ahead and pump that down. If I'm ever going to be working in the system, I would pump that down and just change the dryer out and go to town. Also, on another note, if I really, really wanted to, theoretically, I could just pump the system down to 10 PSI, pull the dryer out real quick before all the gas, just do a hot swap on it too. Not ideal, but I could do it if I wanted to, all right? So it's just not something that I need to do, but yes, I was aware that I did that, okay? What are microchannel coils? Microchannel is just a different style of condenser coil. It's aluminum with super tiny little openings inside of it. It's much more efficient, but it has some downsides to it. A microchannel coil, the easiest way I could explain it to someone that doesn't understand exactly what it is, it looks just like a radiator in a car. The concept of microchannel coils kind of has been with cars for a long time with radiators. In refrigeration and air conditioning, we've had tube and fin condenser coils for the very long time, and the microchannels are actually kind of newer to refrigeration and air conditioning when you look at it as a big picture kind of a thing. So, but it's just a different style of condenser coil that has flaws, but then it's also has benefits too. Okay, so, all right, let me get into what I got going on here. Hold on a second. I'm looking at my list. Okay, this was a good question too. In my recent video that I titled, with the health inspector being there, did the customer truly fail the health inspection? And if they did, why were they still in the building? Okay, no, the customer did not truly fail the health inspection. But let me tell you that the way that my customers operate, most of my customers, if you ever get anything other than an A on your health report, you failed your health inspection. When in actuality, you can have, I believe, as low as a C. Maybe, I don't know if you can get a D or not before the health department would actually shut you down. Okay. So in my customers' eyes, they failed their health inspection because they did not necessarily get an A. Okay. They got a B temporarily until Monday when the health inspector went back out there and re-inspected and they were good to go. Okay. But so that's just how that works with them. All right. Let me see what I got going on in the chat. See if I'm missing anything in here. Let me see what else we got. Jesus213, thanks so much for becoming a channel supporter, bud. That's really awesome, okay? Let me see what else. Have I seen a walk-in evaporator with both bad evaporator fan motors? Yes, I have. I've seen walk-in condensers with 2 bad condenser fan motors, evaporators with 2 bad evaporators. Yes, I have seen it all. When do I think we will see hydrocarbons in walk-ins? Brad, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised within the next 10 to 20 years if hydrocarbons aren't the most popular refrigerant. But just be ready because they'll find a reason to say hydrocarbons need to be outlawed too. So, you know, there's always going to be an evolution to, you know, constantly try to achieve, you know, the perfect climate sensitive refrigerant and all this different stuff. So, but yeah, I think hydrocarbons, once they get past the charge limitations, right, they'll definitely become more popular because they're super efficient. They save money all around. You know, with hydrocarbon R290 refrigerant, we run smaller condensers, smaller evaporators. That means less raw materials needed to make that equipment. The refrigerant's much more efficient. But my question is, and again, I'm not trying to get all political and smart and everything, but how much work goes into making that hydrocarbon refrigerant, right? Because you still have to extract it from the ground, process it, find, you know, and whatever. So I want to know how much work goes into that versus, but again, I don't know. You know, you guys kind of get where I'm going with that one. So, all right, let's see what else. What else do we got going on in here? Why did we not start with lower condensing pressure in the first place? That's a good question, but I'm not smart enough to know the answer to that one. Have I ever seen a unit that had never been maintained? Yeah. I mean, I've come across it a few times, you know, air conditioning units that just, you know, you could tell they've never, ever been cleaned. Yeah, I don't have videos of them or anything, but all right, I'm going to get to plot twist. In 2050, we'll be told that R12 is the safest for the planet. Yeah, that would be funny, huh? Did copper go up on the West Coast? It's through the roof here. I've heard that it's gone up. I know refrigerant prices went up. The price of R22 shot up quite high. But I haven't really paid a lot of attention to the copper prices lately. But I've kind of heard from other people that it's going up. So, let's see what else. Have I ever come across an oil-fired furnace? No. Or other things just get, no, I don't really do much furnace work at all, very much. All right, I'm going to get to my list of questions here. Mike referenced another video of mine asking why I would encourage the customer to replace an AC unit over just the compressor. So, I don't have the full context of Mike's question because it just pops up on my channel and I don't think he was replying to anybody else. I tried to go back. It's a really old video that I was working on an R22 air conditioning system. And I'm assuming, because I didn't go back and watch the video, and this is something that happens when people ask me a question about my video, especially if it's an old video, sometimes I have to go rewatch the video to know what they're even talking about, because there's so many videos that it's like, I think I know what he might be talking about, but I'll have to rewatch it to fully understand. But the way that I operate my business, and I'm not saying that everybody has to operate it this way, okay? I'm certainly not the most profitable person in the world, and I'm sure that, you know, I'm doing a lot of things wrong. In fact, I know I'm doing a lot of business things wrong, okay? But the way that we operate here is that I just give the customer information, and I will ask them certain questions about their equipment. So for instance, if I'm working on, like today, I sent a quote out for a reach-in cooler that in my opinion should be replaced. In my opinion, it should not be fixed, but I did not tell the customer that, okay? Because it is repairable. Now, if it'd be one thing, if it's completely not repairable, then I would tell them it's done, okay? But this equipment was repairable. So the way that I posed it was, I went to the customer and I said, look, here's the deal. This equipment is in really bad shape and it's going to cost approximately X number of dollars to fix it, broken down as follows. And then I break it down what my original service call was, what the materials, what the labor, tax, and an approximate total. And then I say, is this equipment worth this much money to you? Question mark. How would you like me to proceed? So what I've done is I put the ball in their court. I give them the information and they choose whether or not they want to fix it. Now, do I think it's silly if the customer fixes it? Sure, I do. But guess what? It's not my business. And if the customer wants to fix it, and let's say something else breaks tomorrow, it's not going to be my fault because I gave them all the information and said, you know, this equipment's in really bad shape, and I let them make that decision. Okay, so that's how I typically approach this stuff. So in the situation that Mike was asking me a question about an air conditioning compressor, you know, it really depends. You know, I just put the information in the customer's hands, and, you know, I just let them make the decisions. I'm not the person here trying to do this. And I'll tell you something too, that with most of the customers that I deal with, they buy their own equipment. All right. I'm not selling them equipment. Right. So I let them make those decisions. If they buy it, I actually make less money if they buy the equipment, but I still give them all the information. Okay. And just let them make those decisions. All right. Let's see what else I got going on in here. Can I explain a headmaster and the purpose of keeping your head pressure up? A headmaster or a head pressure control valve, I kind of explained it a few minutes ago, but it's just there to maintain a pressure differential across the expansion valve. Let's think about it like this. If you have an expansion valve, you have a liquid refrigerant coming into one side of the expansion valve, and then you have a vapor liquid mixture coming out the other side of the expansion valve. And there's a huge pressure drop, right? Because you've got low pressure coming out the other side of the expansion valve and high pressure coming in one side. That is the pressure differential. As the pressure differential gets lower from the high side to the low side, right? So the high side pressure drops way down. It has a harder time driving that refrigerant through the expansion valve at a certain flow rate. So therefore the expansion valve has a harder time controlling the flow of the refrigerant, especially a thermostatically controlled expansion valve that relies on suction line temperature to mechanically open and close the valve, right? So when you do not have that pressure differential, things start to happen within the system that can have negative effects, okay? So why do we use head pressure control? To maintain the pressure differential across the expansion valve. That's the simplest answer. We can do that with fan cycling. We can do that with head pressure control valves. We can do that with slowing down condenser fan motors, different things like that, okay? But the whole purpose is there to maintain that pressure differential from high pressure to low pressure. Has to be that certain pressure differential to move that refrigerant through the valve at the proper rate, so that way the valve can then control the flow of the refrigerant properly, okay? Think about a thermostatically controlled expansion valve as a dumb expansion valve. They're dumb. They can only operate within a narrow window, okay? If you put on an electronically controlled expansion valve, an EEV, they're a lot smarter. They have their own flaws in other ways too, but they can control the flow of refrigerant a lot better at lower pressure differentials than a dumb thermostatically controlled expansion valve, okay? Hopefully that makes sense for you, bud. All right, let me see what else. In the latest video, would a headmaster valve been an appropriate solution versus 2 fan cycling switches? A headmaster valve or head pressure control valve certainly would have been a good solution. It just was not something that I had readily available to me. I had fan cycle switches at the shop. It was just easy enough. Like I said in the video, I really wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. Just throw it on there, okay? But yes, if I had if I had a head pressure control valve, I certainly could have put one on there. Outside of the basic EPA certs, what certs would I recommend any tech I'm considering hiring have? Nate, MedGas, Tech College. Jeremy, I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to kind of answer some other questions too. And Jonathan had asked me a question, what I want in a new tech fresh out of trade school. And Jeremy, your question kind of segues right into that. So for me, as a business owner, what do I want in a new service technician that's knocking on my door that's fresh out of trade school? Okay. First off, I want any and all certifications that that technician can possibly get his hands on. Minimum, a Section 608 EPA universal certification. Okay. That's the absolute minimum. Now, granted, I live in California where you do not have to have any licensing to be a service technician other than a 608 certification, which is a federal certification to handle refrigerants, okay? So you do not have to have any kind of licensing to be an HVAC service tech, but you do have to have a contractor's license to be a business owner, okay? So as a service tech coming fresh out of trade school, what I'm looking for is any certification they can get, but a certification in my eyes does not mean that tech is an amazing service tech. It just means that that tech tried hard to get these certificates and they studied hard to pass a test, okay? So in general, as a service technician, I would like to see them have the EPA 608. That's a mandatory. Any kind of NATE certifications they can give. Now, for a technician to get a NATE certification or an RSES CM certification, you know, what that means is that technician took a test, and, you know, anybody can pass a test. But more importantly, what I like about NATE and the RSES CM exam is that in order to keep that certification, you have to keep educating yourself. You don't just get a cert and move on. And in all fairness, I have NATE certifications and they have expired because I have not taken any continuing education classes over the last 18 months. Therefore, my NATE certifications expired, okay? Because I did not continue my education. So I'm going to have to retake the test and continue my education to maintain my future NATE certifications. So I like that commitment that someone has made when they come to me with a NATE cert, because it's not so much that they passed a test, it's that they're going to continue to educate themselves to maintain that NATE certification, okay? So that's a really important thing for me. Now, to get back a little bit more to what Jonathan asked me, you know, what am I looking for in a service tech fresh out of trade school? I'm looking for a technician that is hungry to learn. I'm looking for technicians that you know, are open to new ideas, right? That are open to new ways to do things, right? For instance, I'm a freak, right? And I am very particular about certain things. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but anybody that's worked with me and or worked for me is going to laugh when I say this, but I am a nut job when it comes to rolling up my water hoses, okay? My water hoses have to be absolutely perfect. Okay, every time I use my hoses, I take them up onto the roof. I carry two, I think they're 75-foot hoses, maybe 50 foots. But, and after every use, I take a damp towel and I wipe down the entire hose, completely dry and clean it. And I drain the hose. And then I roll them up into a perfect round formation where the hose always meets back and it has to be perfect. Now, why do I do that? Okay. I hate picking up my hoses and then making my shoulder dirty. I wear a beige shirt. I hate it when they make your shoulder dirty. I hate when I take my hose and I put it in the one specific place that's in my van and it doesn't fit into that place. So, you know, something that I really watch out for with a new technician that's working with me, when I tell him, hey, I'm very particular about how I roll my hoses up. You know, if he doesn't roll those hoses up and show an interest in doing it the way that I like it, that right away is something that tells me that he's not interested in being a team player. in working and trying to do things the way that we do them. Okay. Now, do I expect my technicians to roll their own hoses up the exact same way as me? No. Okay. My guys don't roll their stuff. And in fact, most of the guys that work with me, you know, they'll go to roll my hose up and no, it's okay. I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. Just because I'm very particular, right? So I'm not necessarily looking for perfection in a technician, but I'm looking for that drive to want to, you know, try to be better and to try to, you know, I'm having a hard time explaining what I'm saying, but I'm hoping you guys get the concept, okay? So, but I also realize that I'm a nut job when it comes to everything. Same thing goes for rolling up my ropes and different things like that. Like I have a particular place that I put my stuff in my van, and it has to be rolled up a certain way to fit in there. You know, when it comes to using a rope on the roof, like again, I'm a nut job. I'm super anal. I don't like my rope laying on the roof while you're waiting, you know, like the excess rope. I like it to be rolled up and hanging on top of something so that way it doesn't sit in water and things like that. So again, I know I'm a nut job. Philip, holy moly, thank you so very much for that super chat. That is amazing. Okay, guys, these, like what Philip just did, right? These super chats are amazing. They are absolutely not needed, but they help a lot, and I really appreciate them. I'm going to continue to do these live streams just like I have for the last 2+ years, but any little bit helps. Thank you so very much, Philip. Okay, really appreciate it, man. What kind of hoses do I use? So typically they're the black rubber, recycled tire hoses, either made by Goodyear or Continental Tire. I usually buy them from Home Depot. They last me typically about 1.5 to 2 years for every hose set, and I take them in and out of restaurants all the time. So do I ever work on heating stuff other than heat pumps? Every once in a blue moon I do a little bit of gas heat work, but being that I live in Southern California, we don't do a lot of gas heating. I mean, we don't have a lot of heating issues very much. So exactly. Don't forget about extension cords. I'm a nut about my extension cords too. Same thing. I roll them up into a perfect circle. I clean them, I dry them. That's just how I am. Okay. So kind of a nut. What do I use to film and recap on the job? Super easy, Trail Master. The easiest thing in the world. I use my phone. I film with a Samsung S10 Plus. I even have another phone. I bought another phone to use just for videos, a new Samsung S20, whatever fancy note thing. And I actually like the S10 Plus the best because the microphone has a great mic and it gives good sound, and the video is amazing. So that's what I use to film. Now my recaps, I use a Logitech Brio camera, nothing too expensive. And then I just use some software, Streamlabs. I try to repurpose things. So I use the recording feature on Streamlabs to record my outros. There's not a lot of production that goes into my videos, guys. I have some fancy mics and stuff like that, but yeah, it's not too crazy, the production that I use. So if I don't answer any of your questions enough, if you want more answers, like about the studio gear and stuff that I use, feel free to send me an email, guys, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. So, all right, let me see what else we got going on in here. Jason had asked me a question. If I thought that supermarket refrigeration and or the type of work that I do is harder, which one's better? Jason said that he's done supermarket before, but he just had a hard time with the amount of work and the hours, and he was kind of curious if what I do would be better than supermarket. So, I'm going to say that I'm kind of a nut when I work. I'm very high strung. I move around a lot, and I'm very efficient with what I do. So working in restaurants, I do okay. All right. Supermarket work is certainly going to be more mentally demanding, okay? And it's going to be more physically demanding as far as the amount of hours that you're going to work, right? It is very mentally demanding working in restaurants too. You're working in tight spaces. So I'm not going to say one's harder than the other, but one is certainly going to take a lot more of your life than, which being supermarket is going to take a lot more of your life than restaurant refrigeration. But there's also a big money difference there too. So keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to mark that question off, and I'm going to get to another question. I do want to cover this because I do have to do this every once in a while. One of my recent videos, I had quite a few people trying to guess and or correctly guessing the name of the restaurant that I was working at. Okay. Guys, that is the one thing that I delete in my comments immediately. I rarely ever delete comments. I don't delete comments of people criticizing me. unless they're hateful and or hateful towards the other people in the chat. And if they're spamming, I delete them, okay? But when it comes to people guessing restaurant names, sometimes you guess them right, sometimes you guess them wrong, but they immediately get deleted, whether they're right or wrong, because that is the one thing that I can't have in my comments is people guessing the restaurant names, okay? Some of you guys work in the same restaurants that I do, and you can clearly tell what restaurants I'm in, and I appreciate the fact that you guys respect that, okay? I'm trying to protect the restaurants. What the normal person that does not do restaurant refrigeration sees in my videos and what they think is disgusting and that restaurant should be shut down. Guys, I don't work for nasty restaurants. So if you think it's gross, you don't even know what's out there. There is really bad stuff out there, okay? There's horrible restaurants that you couldn't even imagine. People that never fix anything, okay? So yes, you may see some crap in the bottom of a drawer unit, or you may see something that's a little dirty and you're like, oh my gosh, I get these comments from people that I'm a chef and I would never let my restaurant. Yeah, but I'm working for a chain restaurant, guys. They're not going to be sparkly, spotless, perfect, okay? If someone's telling you that they don't have bugs in their restaurants, they're lying, okay? It just means that they probably have a good pest control program that's preventing from those bugs or killing those bugs, okay? Every restaurant's going to have bugs, roaches, mice, different things like that. It's just about what they do to prevent that stuff, okay? By having proper pest control and preventative maintenance when it comes to that kind of stuff, okay? So that is the main reason why I do not mention what restaurants I work for, is because I'm trying to protect the restaurants, because the general public, what they don't understand, they would try to shut down every one of my restaurants for something so silly, okay? And I don't need that kind of publicity or attention. All right, let's get to the chat and see what I'm missing in there. Let me see what we got. Did any of my hoses burst inside of a building? No, I've never had that issue before. Todd the Gamer, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. I really, really appreciate it. What is the craziest thing that I have seen on the job? You know, these questions are really hard because I don't think of them very often. I've seen... I'll tell you one. I went to go work at a strip club one time, and I went there during the day when the lights are on. Those places are nasty when the lights are on. Ugh, gross. So that's pretty nasty. But I mean, other than that, you know, I've seen bugs. I've pulled out reach-in coolers to change them, and there's plants literally growing behind them from an avocado seed, you know, like growing branches and crap. I've seen weird stuff like that, but I don't know. I don't know if that's the craziest stuff that I've seen, but all right, let's see what else. Let me see. You went to some restaurants, and if you drop your tool, it's gone. Oh, yeah? All right. Challenge for other California techs in Chris's area, right on the inside of the AC. Hi, Chris. That's pretty funny, huh? All right. Let me see what else we got in here. I already answered that one. I'm going to get to my list of questions at the top. Oh, this is a good one. I get this quite often, and someone really, I think like 2 or 3 people asked me in my recent video, how come I'm not using a recovery dryer on my recovery machine? I typically don't use dryers unless I suspect that the refrigerant is contaminated. If it's a burnout, I will certainly use a dryer, okay? But when it comes to filtering the refrigerant coming into my recovery machine, like when I'm sucking refrigerant out of a system, that filter dryer is a restriction, and it slows down the recovery process. So if I don't suspect a contaminated system, like when I changed the pressure controls or the fan cycle controls, that refrigerant was fine. So I purged the system, pulled the refrigerant in. I saw no need to use a recovery dryer, okay? You know, it's important to use recovery dryers, you know, especially if you want to protect your machines. But if you're working on your own equipment consistently, like I do, I work on a lot of the same equipment, I know that it's not contaminated. You know, when I mean contaminated, I mean like with acid, right? And that kind of stuff. That's what's going to hurt my recovery machine. And even then, is it really going to hurt it too much? I mean, if it was sludge, that's when I'd be truly concerned about it, okay? So I don't use recovery dryers very often because most of the time I'm just recovering refrigerant to make a simple repair, and I'm putting the refrigerant back into the system. If I was worried about contamination, then yes, I would use a filter dryer. Obviously, you can go bigger and bigger on the filter dryers if you want. So I will address the fact that when you're using recovery equipment, I see videos on YouTube, I see questions on Facebook and different stuff like that quite often where people are saying, you know, what's the fastest recovery machine? I want the best one, the blah, 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 blah. And most of the time, what I see is they're showing a picture of them using their manifold gauge set to recover, okay? Understand, I use my manifold gauge set to recover, but I understand the limitations. We as technicians need to understand, and we've been learning more and more lately, but we need to, focus a little bit more on it, that when we restrict the flow with a 1/4-inch hose, that is our biggest enemy right there. If we're trying to use a recovery machine and we're saying it's too slow, have you changed your hoses over to bigger hoses? Have you taken the Schraders out of your system? Taking the Schraders out, using 3/8 diameter hoses. People ask, well, how would you use a 3/8 diameter hose when you have a 1/4-inch connection? They make hoses that have 1/4-inch connections, but 3/8 in diameter on the actual hose, and that's the ID. So the bigger the hoses you can use, the better, all right? It's going to speed up your process, if anything. And again, if I'm in a hurry, if it's really hot outside, I'll really bust out. I have some really fancy Appion, Megaflow, whatever fancy stuff. Typically don't use that unless it's really, really hot and I really need to move the refrigerant fast. Most of the time, I'm going to use my manifold gauge set. I'm going to take out the Schraders, but then the process hose, the yellow hose coming from my manifold, is going to be 3/8, and then the yellow hose going from the recovery machine to the tank is going to be 3/8 also. Theory being that you got 2 1/4-inch hoses feeding into a 3/8 hose. Think about it. 2 1/4-inch hoses going through a manifold gauge set coming out a 1/4-inch hose. It's going to take forever. It's going to lead to higher system pressures, higher tank pressure, and your recovery machine is going to struggle because of it. So the bigger the hoses that you can use to recover and or evacuate, the better. Let me see what I just missed in here. Frank F. Guan, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. I really, really appreciate it. Is there a specific filter dryer that can be attached to the suction line that doesn't interfere with oil return, or can any filter dryer work? All right, when it comes to filter dryers, typically a suction line filter dryer has the same desiccant in it as a liquid line filter dryer. So theoretically, you could use a liquid line filter dryer for a suction line filter dryer. But here's where you're going to run into a problem. Typically, suction line filter dryers are bigger. The desiccant is bigger, and it allows for more flow to go through the dryer, okay? Suction line filter dryers' biggest problem is when they restrict the system, they slow down the velocity of the refrigerant moving through the system. Therefore, they can affect the oil return coming back to the compressor, all right? So the biggest suction line filter dryer you can use on the suction line, the better. But even though you put a big enough filter dryer on there, you also got to make sure that you don't have a big pressure drop across that dryer causing issues, because that can create some stuff, okay? Let me see what else we got in here. What the heck? Yeah, I don't know what's going on with her. All right. Let me see what else we got going on in here. Let's see. Does it matter what side of the recovery cylinder you recover to, high side or low side? Yes, it does. Okay. So I don't have my stuff right here. No, I don't. But on a recovery tank, right, you have a high and you have a low, or you have a liquid and a vapor. It's not really high and low. It's liquid and vapor. One side is going to have a dip tube going down to the bottom of the cylinder. The other side is the vapor side, and it pulls from the top of the cylinder. So if you are pushing refrigerant into the liquid side through that dip tube, what I would encourage you guys to do is, when you get an opportunity, pull a recovery tank apart, and you'll see that that dip tube is usually like a plastic line, and it's smaller than a 1/4-inch diameter. So if you're pushing refrigerant into the recovery cylinder through the liquid side going into that dip tube, it is going to slow down the refrigerant flow, not by a lot, but it's going to slow it down. So pumping refrigerant into the cylinder through the vapor side is going to allow for a less restricted flow on the recovery cylinder. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Someone said, what happened to the movie quote and the song quote? I just haven't done those in a very long time, bud. All right. I should review a cordless vacuum pump. That is actually the plan. I have a cordless vacuum pump, so that will be one. Does it matter? I already answered that question. Have I accidentally damaged tools and equipment? Yeah, but I mean, I can't really think of which ones, but yes, I have. All right, I'm going to go to my list of things to talk about. Oh, I got lots of comments, guys, about flares, right? And I get this one all the time. I like using flares on the roof, right? I love using flares on my liquid line dryer and my sight glass. It's a very common thing for me. The reason why I like using flare connections is because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to bring my torches up on the roof if I don't really need to. And when you use a flare dryer, the cool thing is that when you potentially do a repair downstairs at the evaporator, I'm not going to need to bring my torches on the roof to change the dryer. Just pump the system down, change the dryer with my tools, evacuate the system, and move on, okay? I realize that if flares are installed incorrectly, if they're over-torqued or if they're under-torqued, yes, they are going to leak, okay? And yes, if I brazed in a fitting, I would never have to, if I brazed it correctly, I would never have a leak there. Okay, yes, I get it. But I take the risk by using a flare dryer just because it makes it easier on me when I go to do the work to replace dryers and different things like that, okay? All right, cross that one off the list. And let me see what else we got in the chat going on. Any vacuum pump can be cordless, but may not be necessarily function. That is pretty funny, Laska. That is absolutely right. Is there any more HVACR videos companies, other locations besides California, or no? No, I mean, I am only one company. I am HVACR videos. Okay. So no, I don't have any other companies in any other states. I'm only in California, Southern California to be exact. What is the most ridiculous place that I've ever seen a condensing unit installed or RTU installed? I've seen them installed in like attics that were closed off, right? That just had like screens all around the enclosed attic space. And then they just have like excessively high ambient temperatures in the summertime. I've seen that a few times. That's kind of nutty. Yeah, I think that's probably the weirdest one is like, I can think of the place that I was at. I actually drove by it recently telling my wife one time, but yeah, it was like all installed in an attic. And then on top of that, it was full of pigeons. So pigeons were all living in there and there was just pigeon crap everywhere. And I hate pigeons, man. Those are flying rats for sure. All right. Let's get to my list. So Greg had asked a question about an old video. And I know from the thumbnail of the video what he's talking about. So I changed a compressor, right? And this was out in the desert. I occasionally do work out in the Coachella Valley, which is in Southern California. It's, probably one of our hottest deserts out here. And I changed a condenser fan motor when I was changing a compressor. And I said in the video that I changed the condenser fan motor just as a preventative measure. And I get this question quite often. People saying, I ripped the customer off because I changed a part that was still working. Okay, remember, that's not what Greg said, but I'm just saying in general, I get this question. I get this so much, guys. Remember, I keep my customer in the loop about everything, okay? So, yes, I changed a part that was still working. Yes, it probably would have worked fine for I don't know how long. But what you don't know, the people, or not Greg, but the people that push me on this one all the time, is that at that particular restaurant, we go through condenser fan motors every year. We have to change the refrigeration condenser fan motors because of the ambient environments. They often operate in 120 plus degree temperatures consistently for quite a few months. Therefore, the shelf life on the equipment does not last. So I had a failed compressor and I was in there and the condenser fan motor looked like crap. I changed it preventatively. Also with the customer's permission, okay? So I'm always including the customers inside that stuff. So I'm using the skills that I have as a technician, kind of trying to predict problems. And if I was really in it for making money, what I would do, and I am in it to make money, but if I really wanted to stab the customer, I wouldn't change that fan motor. I would change the compressor, let the fan motor fail a few weeks later, and then go back out and charge them a trip charge and a truck charge and all this different crap and charge them all kinds of fees and change the fan motor then. I was trying to do the customer a solid saying, hey, I'm here. We can save on some travel costs. This motor's likely going to go bad. So, hey, what do you think about changing that? I'm not saying that's how everybody else should operate their business. That's just how I operate mine, okay? All right, let's see what else we got in here. Have I worked at any hotels? Not really. I've done some work for hotels, but not very much. Let me see what else we got in here. Okay, so I'm going to get to my list of things. Let's see, I already answered that question. And already answered that question. I'm just going through my list. Already answered that one. Already answered that one. I'm getting through these questions pretty good right now. That's cool. All right. I already answered that one. Okay, cool. So I'm going to get to the chat right now and see if we have any more questions. When will I do a spin tool review? Chad, that is actually coming up too. I was just talking with HVACR North because we're both talking about doing that. A couple different swaging tools and flaring tools, and spin was going to be one of them. So yeah, that'll be coming up. Have I ever had a callback? Oh my gosh, yes. I've had many, many callbacks. I've had to credit customers for my mistakes many times. Yeah, oh yeah. Am I hiring? I actually am hiring. I was thinking about making a video about this, and I haven't said anything, but I'm looking for experienced and or potentially non-experienced service technicians. I'm looking to probably bring one more person on right now, and I am open to training a service technician. So if anybody that's watching this is in my area of the Inland Empire of Southern California, specifically Riverside, California, and is interested working with me, send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. I probably will be making a YouTube video about this and posting it on my channel shortly, where I kind of lay everything out. But yeah, it's definitely something I am looking for in other service technicians. So yes. What do I do if I can't fix an issue or cause damage? Do I have to pay for the replacement? Well, as an ethical person, as an ethical business, if I damage someone's equipment, then yes, it is my responsibility to pay for it. That customer is trusting me with the ability to work on their equipment with the skills that I have. And if I feel like I made a mistake doing something wrong that I should have been able to prevent, and I cause damage to their equipment, of course, I am going to warranty that and or take care of that. But there's also times when I explain things to my customer ahead of time and kind of give them warnings like, hey, I'm not very comfortable working on this. I have some ideas on how it works. If you don't mind, we can go ahead and give it a try, but I can't promise that it's going to be perfect. You know, yeah, we'll address that. But if I feel like I did something wrong, I am going to make it right, because I've said this many times. I don't want to make $10 off of my customer today. I'd rather make money off of my customer over the next 20 years. I want to maintain those customers and keep them and keep doing honest service repairs. So I don't want to gouge them now and make a quick buck and not be able to work for them tomorrow. Okay, makes sense? I want to keep them happy. All right, let me see what else we got in here. What do I do if I have a leak in a system with a long line set that I'm not easily accessible and I can't find the leak? In that situation, I would do some things to verify that the leak is in the line set, and then we're going to have to go ahead and approach the situation of potentially replacing the line set. Now, I can think of one particular customer where if I ever have leaks in the line set, I am going to tell them to call someone else because this is on a 5-story building. They've got line sets running 5 stories up through spaces that I have no access to, and I have no interest even addressing those issues if and when they come. So I'm going to do everything I can to repair leaks at evaporators and condensers, but sometimes you just have to know when to throw in the towel. So, all right, let me see what else. I seem like I like to micromanage my service techs. In a way, there is micromanaging going on, but let me explain. It's not that I want to micromanage my service techs. I actually just recently had a conversation with all of them. And it's, look, I don't want to have to tell you guys how to do things. But what I want is I want you guys to do things to my expectations. Okay? So, do I want to micromanage anybody? No, absolutely not. But the way that we run our business, see, here's how this works. As a business owner, if my customer's not happy, they're not going to call me anymore. What happens to the service tech? The service tech theoretically can go work for someone else. But what happens to my business? My business no longer has that customer. So within reason, I need to keep that customer happy, and they have an expectation that they want me to meet. So my service techs have to operate within that expectation. And if they don't operate within that expectation, we have to talk to them and we have to say, what is it that you're doing wrong? Maybe that's what people consider micromanaging. I don't think so. I don't like the term micromanage because I'm just a business owner that's concerned about my business. And, you know, we don't do things half-ass. We don't, if you talk to any of my service techs, they'll tell you that I'm not one for doing things half-ass. I'm doing things correctly and doing it the right way. But I can guarantee you that you can talk to almost any one of my service techs and never do I tell them to hurry up. Never do I rush them through a job, okay? Without saying, hey, we're going to have to go back and finish that. I'm constantly having to tell all my service techs, you need to spend more time on the job. You should have spent more time doing that maintenance. You should have spent more time on that compressor change, because I don't think you could have done that compressor change following all the proper procedures in 3 hours. Because when I do that job, it takes me 6. So something's wrong here. So am I a fan of micromanaging? No, but I'm a fan of operating within the expectations that my customers have for me. Because again, my service techs can always go work for someone, but my customers, I want them to remain with me, so I need to keep them happy. So is that micromanaging? You know, you tell me. So, all right, let's see what else. What else was? Have I ever had a line set snap or explode? No. All right. How would I hang a walk-in cooler evaporator with no way to access the roof of the box? That's an interesting one. Chain of lakes, refrigeration, and AC. So what we do in that situation is we'll use toggle bolts. So you use the little toggle bolts, you drill a big ass hole, you pop the toggle through, it goes up to the top, and then you tighten the toggle down. That's typically what we'll do. We do that with ceiling mounted evaporators, you know, the low profile ones like the space saver coils, because often for whatever reason, those things always seem to be on the walk-ins that I can't get access to, like it has a pitched roof above it that has no access. And in that situation, I'll use toggle bolts. So just the simple ones from Home Depot, nothing fancy. The biggest thing about a toggle bolt though, if you're going to use it to hang an evaporator coil, is you have to make sure that when the toggle is fully depressed, there has to be the thickness of the ceiling in between the toggle and the pan head of the bolt to be able to push it through so the toggle can open on the roof, and then you can then tighten it down. So hopefully that makes sense for you, bud. All right. Let me see. How common are line set leaks or braze joint leaks over a period of time? Not very common, Hunter, to be honest with you. They're not very common at all. What was the biggest AC I've ever worked on? A 35 ton. I can think of the restaurant. It's not even there anymore, but we don't do the big stuff at all. So how should refrigerants be added to a system as a liquid or gas, and why? Okay. So if you're dealing with multi-component refrigerants, such as 404, they're blends. They're a blend of many different refrigerants. It should be added as a liquid at a minimum, okay? But I do every refrigerant as a liquid, whether it be propane, R22, R12, anything. I do it all as a liquid. It's just easier. That way you don't forget, okay? But theoretically, a single component refrigerant such as R12, R22, R290, you can charge with vapor, but I just do liquid because it's faster, and you just got to be careful with the compressor, but you're fine. So liquid refrigerant is the best way. It just got to be cautious about it. All right. I've mentioned before that I want my techs to call me back after every call. That's micromanaging. See, DHard01, that's not a very fair statement, because you don't understand how the business operates. So maybe there's a reason that I have my technicians call in to check in, right? Maybe there's a reason that you don't understand. And I'm not going to go into that on this video because I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. But also, on the other side, it doesn't even matter, because that's just the way that we operate our business. I mean, how should it be? So, you know, do you guys think that I should give my technicians at the beginning of the day a list of service calls and just not talk to them? I mean, with that being said, maybe you shouldn't even talk to them for a week or 2 weeks, or maybe they should just check in at the end of the month. I mean, it's not a very fair thing to judge someone on the way that they run their business. It's really easy to, you know, to pass judgment on the way that we run our business. But again, you don't understand everything that goes down, right? So maybe there's more that I don't say on my videos. Maybe there's more that you don't know. Or maybe we just simply want to know how the job went. Dealing with chain restaurants, let me tell you something that a lot of people don't understand. I work for a corporate structure. I do not work for the restaurant managers. I work for a single person in the corporate office. I have one point of contact, typically within every one of my chain restaurants. And that single point of contact will often call me and say, on a job that I'm not working on. And he'll say, hey, how did this particular job go? What happened? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me call one of my techs. And then I have to call my tech, and it's just downtime. So it's so much easier if I know what's going on. So that way, when that person calls me to ask me a question about it, or what happens if my tech's not available and we get a service call or a callback, if I knew what happened on that job, then it's a lot easier for me to address those problems. So I wouldn't call that micromanaging. I would call that just running your business the way that you want to run it. That's just my 2 cents on that one. All right. Thoughts on the Strong Boy cereal from the Overtime Show thumbnail? That was just funny, but I don't really know much about that. The office has to know what's going on. That's very true. So, all right, everybody. I really, really appreciate you guys. It is dinner time. I am going to wrap this stream up. I'm going to go have some dinner. I think we're having tacos tonight was the last thing I heard. So I am going to cue up the outro music. If I missed your questions, please feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Again, as I said in the beginning of the stream, the hats, the large, extra large hats are now back in stock. I just put them up on the website today. So if you guys are interested, pick them up before we run out again. I'm going to try not to run out, but obviously just they're available. A lot of people have been asking. So really, really appreciate you guys. And again, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. We'll be live on the HVAC Overtime Show this Friday about 6:05 p.m. There's a link in the show notes to the video. I really, really appreciate you, and we will catch you on the next one, okay?